Chant the name of the Lord and His glory unceasingly, that the mirror of the heart may be wiped clean, and quench that mighty forest fire, worldly lust, raging furiously within. O name, stream down in moonlight on the lotus heart, open its cup to knowledge of thyself. O self, drown deep in the waves of His bliss, chanting His name continually, tasting His nectar at every step, bathing in His name, that bath for weary souls. Various are thy names, O Lord. In each and every name thy power resides. No times are set, no rites are needful. For chanting of thy name, so vast is thy mercy. How huge then is my wretchedness, who find in this empty life and heart no devotion to thy name. O my mind, be humbler than the blade of grass. Be patient and forbearing like the tree. Take no honor to thyself. Give honor to all. Chant unceasingly the name of the Lord. O Lord and soul of the universe, mine is no prayer for wealth or retinue, the playthings of lust or the toys of fame. As many times as I may be reborn, grant me, O Lord, a steadfast love for thee. Drowning man in this world's fearful ocean is thy servant, O sweet one. In thy mercy, consider him as dust beneath thy feet. Ah, how I long for the day when an instant's separation from thee, O Govinda, will be as 1,000 years. When my heart burns away with its desire, and the world without thee is a heartless void. Prostrate at thy feet let me be, in unwavering devotion, neither imploring the embrace of thine arms, nor bewailing the withdrawal of thy presence, though it tears my soul asunder. O thou, who stillest the hearts of thy devotees, do with me what thou wilt, for thou art my heart's beloved, thou and thou alone. Om Dyo Shanti Antariksham Shanti Prithvi Shanti Apaha Shanti Oshadhaya Shanti Vanaspataya Shanti Vishwedeva Shanti Brahma Shanti Sarvam Shanti Shantireva Shanti Sama Shantiredhi. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om, may there be peace in heaven. May there be peace in the sky. May there be peace on earth. May there be peace in water. May there be peace in the plants. May there be peace in the trees. May there be peace in the gods, in the various worlds. May there be peace in Brahman. May there be peace in all. May there be peace indeed within peace, giving me the peace which grows within me. Om, peace, peace, peace. We listen to it, and we do not hear it. And we name it the inaudible. If a tree falls in the forest and no one is around to hear it, does it still make a sound? The scientific view is that while a tree will make waves in the air to make a sound, it takes an ear to hear it. Welcome everyone to Ramakrishna Monastery, to our Sunday talks here on our YouTube channel. Thank you for joining us from home. We so look forward to getting together again to the end of this pandemic. Today is a special day. For those who do not know, let me remind today is Holi. And it's a very important Hindu tradition in India. And many people all over the world are embracing this festivity. It's an opportunity to get together and celebrate. Is the celebrate what? What, the spring, the springtime, to forgive our past errors, to start again. It's a changing the seasons. The spring means a new life. But unfortunately, we will have to celebrate this at home with our family, to remember the meaning of love, to remember our relationship with God within us, and to share it with our loved ones. We are social beings and we need to interact with each other. We need to be able to hug each other. We need to be able to make connections with our inner self, to our God within us, our inner guide. We need to be able to listen to what he has to say, to listen to our inner self. So I thought, okay, let me just talk about this subject, listen to yourself. I believe this is an essential part of our spiritual practice, so essential that it has to be with our life and the mystery of our life. For many of us, we consider life to be a miracle. The miracle to be alive. I am alive. The fact that I am alive here and now, that we have the honor, that to honor this life every day of our life, we have to remember that our life won't last long. Already some time has passed by. Everything that happens in this universe one day will be gone. And all we have is our here and now. Everything that is happening here and now. Life is happening here and now. So let us not miss our life, this precious gift. You remember Paul? Paul says, maybe I should just quit and go back to making noodles. Noodles? Don't noodles, says Owe. You are too concerned about what was and what will be. Owe says, there is a saying, yesterday is history, tomorrow is a mystery, but today is a gift. That is why it is called the present. I found this line extremely beautiful and I was just so taken by this beautiful movie. It's called Kung Fu Panda. I don't know if you ever got the chance to watch it. I know, it's just a quote from a movie. It says, well, Swami, really? But hey, it's beautiful. It tells us that life is in the present and it's a gift. And we should all be reminded, particularly in this day, in the day of Holi, that we should all celebrate. So we don't have to miss the opportunity to live this wonderful gift we call life. Now, what happens in your life when something unique, some kind of event happen, and you know it's going to happen just one time in your whole life span? What do? You put all your attention on it. You focus there, you take care of all the details, because this is going to be one event in your lifetime. Say in the case of somebody's brother here, his sister is getting married. In the case of a wedding, for example, so much effort is being put. Just because we all know that we want to enjoy, we want it to be great, we want it to be perfect. How do we treat ourselves? How do we treat our life? Even though we know it's going to last just a couple of years more. Especially in this pandemic, we don't know. We don't know. Life is so uncertain, especially now. So the value that we have to give to our lives, the value that we have to give to our present, it is very important. Life is only one life, and it's here, and it is now. A wise man was asked, how do you become wise? He answered, when you are in the company of somebody who is wise, listen very attentively. But then you are talking and someone is listening also. Listen attentively. Listen attentively to your talking, the things you say. Listening, it is indeed an art. We talk to ourselves. If I talk all the time, I don't get to hear anybody. Now, the lecture is supposed to start with me talking. But in reality, this lecture starts with your willingness to start listening. When you decide to listen, this lecture is going to start. So we don't listen. Nobody can talk to you because we just don't listen. And what happens is it has become such a habit. Men never listen, a woman says. And a guy says, I never heard my wife said that. A guy went to a doctor, and he was complaining about his wife, and he said, Doctor, I just don't think my wife is all right. He stopped hearing. He doesn't hear very well. And so the doctor said, well, you can do a test. You can stand before her, say, 15, feet away, and ask her a question and see how that goes. So the man went home, stood in front of his wife. He made sure that his wife was giving him her bag. And he asked, darling, what is for dinner tonight? Nothing. Then he went a few steps towards her and said, hey, what is there for dinner tonight? And nothing. So he literally went forward and stood in front of her, right next to her, and said, I asked you, what is there for dinner tonight? And I told you 4 times already, chicken. The woman said. So clearly it's not that somebody is not listening. We are not willing to listen. And there is a problem there. There is a deep problem that I wanted to discuss today. Even though my main topic, because I can't help it, will lean towards contemplation. and being in the here and now, listening to ourselves and with our inner being. And I can't help it but discuss a little bit why we don't listen. If we can't listen, not much is going to happen in our life. Especially these days, we are so distracted. People are so distracted. And that interaction, that willingness to sit and listen to each other is gone. Or well, we are not taking care of it. And that's a huge danger, because as social beings, we need that interaction so that we learn from each other. Learning is all about being able to listen. And when we listen, it's not just hearing. Our whole attention should be there. Nobody wants to listen. We all have our bias, our preconcepts, preconceived ideas. Again, when you stand in front of somebody and somebody's talking to you, first thing is like, what does he know? There was a Swami here who used to say, you don't know anything. That's how our conversation started, by getting over that. All right, I will listen now. We tend to create boundaries around us as if we knew it all. It might make sense to someone already in the winter of his life or her life, but often we should know that those people have learned their lesson. They tend to be better listeners. Now, when we wake up in the morning, do we look upon the new day as a unique opportunity to celebrate, as a unique opportunity to listen and to be with the presence of what we call God, to make arrangements, to pay attention to every single detail, and be ready for the day? Unfortunately, we don't. We have to allow ourselves to be with ourselves in what we call contemplation. Now, what is contemplation? Contemplation is essentially a listening in silence, an expectancy, and yet, in a certain sense, we must truly begin to hear God when we have ceased to listen. What is the explanation of this paradox? Perhaps only that there is a higher kind of listening, which is not an attentiveness to some special wavelength or receptivity to a certain kind of message, but a general emptiness to the waits, to realize the fullness of the message of God within its own apparent void. What a beautiful combination of words. They are not mine, they are Thomas Merton's. Perhaps only that there is a higher kind of listening, a general emptiness that waits to realize the fullness of the message of God within its own apparent void. In other words, the true contemplative is not the one who prepares his mind for a particular message that he wants or expects to hear, but who remains empty. But who remains empty. Because he knows that he can never expect or anticipate the word that will transform his darkness into light. He does not even anticipate a special kind of transformation. He does not demand light instead of darkness. He waits on the word of God in silence. And when he is answered, it is not so much by a word that bursts into his silence. It is by his silence suddenly, inexplicably revealing itself to him as a word of great power, full of the voice of God. It is by his silence suddenly, inexplicably revealing itself to him in silence as a word of great power, the sound of silence. You all know that song. Full of the voice of God. Do we get the idea slowly? Now we're getting our toes a little bit wet now. We are getting into the topic of what really listening means. Not just to be attentive, to be in silence. The contemplative meditation is the way in which we come to feel our basic inseparability, our union with the whole universe. In that space, whatever happens to us in silence, the same thing is happening in the whole universe at that very moment. Swami Dhyanayogananda says the whole universe is within you. We shouldn't just believe that. We should make efforts to experience that. What that requires is that we just shut up and become silent. The faculty of silence is a powerful faculty that helps us grow internally. We often talk, but ignore the faculty of silence. Now that doesn't mean that you should practice like I'm not going to talk to anybody. That silence could be happening right now. You are actively sitting, listening, hopefully. And that silence, and you can still experience that silence within you. The curious reporter asked the leader of a religious community, "What do you and your sisters in the community say to God when you gather together for prayer?" The sister replied, "We say nothing. We just listen." "Oh," the reporter sighed. "What does God say to you then?" And the sister, with a twinkle in her eyes, replied, "Nothing. God just listens." Isn't it beautiful? Now, whenever we are engaged in any particular activity, what is the point of doing something? We usually engage in some particular, I don't know, hobby, you may say, like playing the guitar or play the piano. What is the point? In our case, we go to the shrine, we meditate, we make it a point to sit down, close our eyes, and try to make connections with our inner self, try to guide our attention and focus it on one single point. Could be a symbol, an idea, or a sound. What is the point? What is the point of meditation? Say if we dance, the dancing itself is the point. Say you are playing music. What is the point in playing music? The listening itself of the music is the point. What is the point of meditation? The meditating action is the point. That means to be, to allow ourselves to be at the present moment with ourselves in action. It's in a way to be so attentive and in silence. When in meditation, in order to meditate, we have to be here and now. Meditation is for the enjoyment of it, for the sake of being with ourselves, for nothing else. But in the action, in the happening, present continuous kind of grammar point. That is the point. So if we practice that, it is said that whatever goes on within you, you will also experience that outside you. And it is said that you will experience some kind of communion. The word communion. Life is simply happening. Everything is happening, and all we need to do is to be and go along with it. We can't help it. So it is on us to celebrate life. It is our call to just be free and wake up to this amazing, beautiful life of ours and say, let me enjoy. Let me stay with myself and listen. Silence is a great spiritual practice. To be silent is essential for you to listen. To be silent is essential for all of us to listen. And listen, it all starts with listening. To be well informed is to be prepared for what comes next. Vedanta makes us ready for this spiritual journey, for this journey of life. Vedanta makes us fit by giving us the right information about ourselves. Listening, again, is essential in our lives. All the great things that can happen in our life starts with listening. So let us stop being arrogant. Let us stop thinking that we know it all. You're running away from yourself. I mean, we all do it, consciously or unconsciously. We run away from ourselves. We cognize, we know when we listen. The ability to cognize, to perceive, the ability to know, Shruti, Shravana. Our life is a God-centered life. Yes, those who have made up our minds to lead a God-centered life, even though this happened in India, but we are all free to make that decision. What is happening in India? What we call the Shruti. The Shruti means Veda. Veda means knowledge. Do you know how that happened? Do you know how Veda, Upanishads, knowledge, the information that we need to wake up to ourselves, do you know how that happens? Listening. Shruti means Veda, that which has been heard. As we know, the life of an individual is to be governed by the teachings of the Vedas. Vedas are otherwise known as Shruti, these revelations. This revelation happened what? Well, in the conference full of noise, everyone talking and nonsense and being distracted with many things around you. You know what happens in those meetings. Veda happen when you are able to stay with yourself in silence. In the process of listening. Now, it's not that, as Thomas Merton said, it's not that God is going to come and talk to you. It happens. It's a revelation. So there is in the Vedic culture, we have this listening, handing over this knowledge, families to families, by the power of listening. That's how this knowledge has been preserved all these years. And it all started with listening. Our hearing power. Shruti is a synonym for hearing. I'd like to share with you something that every time I read it, I just go like, oh, Swami Vivekananda is so awesome. I know some people say, well, Swami, you always quote Swami Vivekananda, you know. We know what he says. Well, really? You really know what he says? We want to hear you. We want to listen to you, what you think. Well, honestly, I'd rather stick to what my teacher says, or to what our teachers have to say. I won't claim anything yet. This happened in a conversation between Sharat Chandra Chakravarti, a disciple of Sri Swami Vivekananda. So he asked, sir, this I has a most tenacious life. it is very difficult. It is very difficult to kill it. The I. What is the I? Our identity, our ego. I talked about it already. But it's so real, unfortunately, that we have to bring it up again. Vivekananda says, yes, in one sense, it is very difficult. But in another sense, it is quite easy. Can you tell me where this I exists? Swamiji asked. How can you speak of anything being killed which never exists at all? Now, if you listen carefully and try to feel his words and message, then we will benefit from it. Truly. How can you speak of anything being killed which never exists at all? That I. Man only remains hypnotized with the false idea of an ego. I mean, the whole thing is here. I mean, so practical. It's like a Mahavakya. Man only remains hypnotized with the false idea of an ego. When this ghost is off from us, all dreams vanish. And then it is found that the one self only exists from the highest being to a blade of grass. From the highest being, that self is the same self that is to be found in a blade of grass. This, he says, will have to be known, will have to be real. He used the word realized. All practice or worship is only for taking off this veil, this hypnotism. When that will go, you will find that the sun of absolute knowledge is shining in its own luster. For the Atman only is self-luminous and has to be realized by itself. How can that, which can be experienced only by itself, be known with the help of any other thing? How can that which can be experienced only by itself be known with the help of any other thing? Hence, the Shruti, the Vedas, say, well, through what means is that to be known, which is the knower? Through what means is that to be known, which is the knower? What is the means? Whatever you know through the instrumentality of your mind. But mind is something material. It is active only because there is a pure self, the capital self behind it, lending light to this mind. Mind is borrowing that light from the self, the always present, the always silent, and we have the power to connect with it. If we only will. So how can you know that self? Through your mind. But this only becomes known, after all, That the mind cannot reach the pure self? No, nor even the intellect. But this only becomes known after all, that the mind cannot reach the pure self, not even by our intellect. Our relative knowledge ends just there. Then, when the mind is free from activity or functioning, it vanishes, and the self, capital Self, is revealed. It is an ancient practice that we are supposed to experience ourselves as ourselves, with the idea of ourselves, being with ourselves, experiencing the happening of ourselves, until that idea vanishes. Then that magic happens. The self is revealed. This state has been described by Shankara as a supersensuous perception. Disciple, but sir, the mind itself is the I. If that mind is gone, then the I cannot remain. Swamiji, yes. The state that comes then is the real nature of the ego. The real nature of the ego. The I that remains then is omnipresent, all-pervading, the self of all. When a jar is broken, the Ghata Kasha, the space in the jar, becomes the Mahakasha, the great space. Is that true? It's not like, oh, wait. There was a space in the jar. Where is it now? When the jar is broken, it merges. In exactly the same way, that supersensuous state or experience, that is the realization of what we call the self, the capital Self. For with the distraction of the jar, the enclosed space is never destroyed. The space within the jar, after the distraction of the jar, is never destroyed. Listen and think. Shravana, Manana. The puny I, which you were thinking of as confined in the body, becomes spread out and is thus realized in the form of the all-pervading I. The puny I, which you were thinking of as confined in the body. What happens to us when we die? Where do we go? The puny I, which you were thinking of as confined in the body, becomes spread out and is thus realized in the form of the all-pervading I, or the self. Hence, what matters it to the real I, or the self, whether the mind remains or is destroyed? What matters this to the real I, or the self, whether the mind remains or is destroyed? That I is always the I. Whether we acknowledge it or not, it is already happening. It is already happening here and now. And what we are all called to do is to just listen. Allow ourselves to be with ourselves, to make friends with ourselves, with our real I that is always with us. What I say, you will realize in course of time. It is realized within oneself in due time. But I want to realize it now. Well, that willingness is very helpful. As you go on with Shravana, proper hearing, as you go on with Manana, proper thinking about that space within your body, and the space being everywhere already, think about it. That I enclosed in your body and the universal I already existing everywhere, from the highest being to the blade of grass. As you go on with proper hearing and proper thinking, you will fully understand it in due time. And then you will go beyond your mind. Then there will be no more questions. Then there will not be space for such a question. In Vedanta, we talk about our own nature, which is never away from me, from us. It's always present. It's always with us. This means to convey the means to convey this knowledge, as I mentioned before, starts with proper hearing. This knowledge is not just a casual thing you hear. It demands proper hearing, proper listening, and proper thinking. Can Isha or Raja, our dogs, do that? Look at them. Beautiful beings. But hey, they are here to enjoy. Don't ask them that. But human beings, oh yes, we have that unique capacity for listening and thinking. And in doing so, our doubts will vanish. And once they are banished, Dhyasana happens. We are established. This happens by being certain that the highest self, we call it Brahman, is real, absolutely real. This can happen by making a decision to go within and not to get distracted in the fantasies of the world. This can only happen when we are able to control our minds, when we are able, by control I mean to observe and to do something about it. Observe what is happening in your mind. What kind of thoughts are you entertaining? And the senses, where do you go? These all combined with the intense desire to master yourself. This has to be combined with that intense desire. I am going to do this. I am doing this. Yeah, but really, there is a party here. It's okay. I have partied enough in my life. I had enough of party already. I had enough of distractions. You can still go there and be in silence, though, if you want to. If you have that capacity and strength, you can still do that. But you have to make it a point. Meditating, contemplating on that reality is that we are all called for. We shouldn't misuse our time. We shouldn't just die while living in distractions. Living death as if, not knowing where you are, not knowing what the goal of life is, without the willingness to listen, you cannot grow. Don't miss your life. Don't lose your life. Life is a precious gift. I like to finish with a quote from Thomas Merton again. The deepest level of communication, the deepest level of communication is not communication. Listen, the deepest level of communication is not communication, but communion. Communion means common union. It is wordless. There are no words. It is beyond words. It is beyond speech. And it is beyond concept. Not that we discover a new unity. We discover an older unity. And he says, my dear brothers and sisters, sisters and brothers, we are already that unity. We are already that one space. That space containing your body, that space is everywhere. We are already one, but we imagine that we are not. And what we have to recover is our original unity, Jesus Christ's message. But what we have to be is what we simply are. Thank you. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om, that outer world is Purna, full of divine consciousness. This inner world is also Purna, full of divine consciousness. From Purna comes Purna, from fullness of divine consciousness, the world is manifested. Taking Purna from Purna, Purna indeed remains, because divine consciousness is non-dual and infinite. Om, peace, peace, peace be into all. Let us celebrate life. Happy Holi. Thank you for being with us. I am being reminded here behind the camera, Monday class. Yes, you are welcome to join us on Monday at 7:30 p.m. We go live, you can say, through this means Meet, Google Meet. Please find the link on our website. Thank you.